The slap landed so loud that the entire hall went silent. It echoed off the polished marble walls and cut through the soft hum of clinking glasses and fake laughter. I stood frozen. My cheeks stung, but not as much as the humiliation. My stepmother, Lorraine, was still glaring at me, her manicured hand raised, her face twisted with disgust. Before we begin, drop a comment and tell us what would you do in this situation? Be honest, tell me in the comments below. We read every comment. Let's begin. You're not family, she shouted, her voice sharp and cruel, slicing through the air like broken glass. You shouldn't even be here. She turned toward the dozens of guests, some of them looking stunned, most pretending not to see, then back to me. This is Charles's birthday, not some pity reunion for charity cases. I glanced at my father, my biological father, across the room. He stood by the cake, surrounded by friends, business partners, and Lorraine's smug side of the family.
But not once did he look at me.
Not even now. He just sipped his whiskey, like he didn't know who I was. The room felt colder than the autumn wind outside. I had only come to drop off the gift I'd spent weeks making. A personalized, hand-carved wooden box, cherry oak, lined with velvet, with a hidden compartment and his initials engraved in gold leaf. It wasn't expensive, just real. But Lorraine never gave me a chance to hand it to him. You have some nerve showing up here uninvited, she hissed, voice low now, close to my ear. You were supposed to disappear when your mother did. But here you are, like a weed that won't die. The pain didn't show on my face. I refused to let it. I slowly bent down, picked up the gift box I dropped when she struck me, and smiled. A small, knowing smile. Then I said, quietly but clearly enough for every guest in earshot to hear, "You all will regret this." Lorraine laughed, a short, mocking burst of sound. Regret what? Cutting out the stray mutt from the pack. I didn't reply. I simply stepped back, eyes sweeping over the guests. Some looked away. A few looked uneasy. That's when the double doors at the front of the banquet hall opened. Everyone turned. A hush rippled across the crowd like a sudden breeze. And in walked him. Gray tailored suit, silver cufflinks, polished Oxfords, eyes like cold steel but with a quiet storm behind them. Michael Langston, founder of Langston Capital, the mysterious billionaire investor from New York everyone had been trying to win over for months. The man Charles had bragged about over and over. He wasn't supposed to show up. Not here. Not to this petty suburban gathering. But there he was. And he walked in like he owned the room. Whispers started, fast and nervous. Charles almost dropped his glass. Lorraine's expression shifted from smug to startled to absolutely pale. And then Michael Langston's eyes landed on me. He walked straight past Charles, past the cake, past Lorraine, and stopped right in front of me. His voice was smooth but firm, loud enough to make everyone freeze.
"Ava."
"There you are." He smiled and extended his hand. "I've been looking for you." The room turned to ice. I heard someone gasp. Lorraine staggered back. My father's mouth opened, then closed again. No one spoke. Michael glanced at the box I held. "Is that for me?" I blinked, almost smiling. It was for my father, but I think he's already received his gifts. "From what I've seen," Michael said, his voice suddenly sharp, "he doesn't deserve it." Then he turned to the crowd. "Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to thank Ava for the proposal she sent me 2 weeks ago. It was the most innovative solution I've read in years. I'd like to publicly announce our official partnership. Langston Capital is backing her project, not Charles's. Effective today." Boom. Silence fell like a dropped chandelier. All the smug smiles vanished. All the carefully planned speeches and setups collapsed. Charles looked like he'd been slapped instead. Lorraine's lips parted, trying to form words, but all she managed was a breathless, "What?" I looked at her, at all of them, and then, still smiling, I whispered, "I told you, you'd regret this." The applause came late, awkward and scattered, but it came. Not from my father, not from Lorraine, but from the other side of the room, Investors, local executives, younger guests who knew Michael Langston wasn't just a big deal. He was the deal. I stood still, my fingers slightly trembling around the gift box I still hadn't let go of. The room was frozen, but inside me, everything was rushing. Heart racing. Vision sharp. Years of buried humiliation, rejection, dismissal, all rising, twisting, ready to explode. But I stayed calm. Michael leaned in and whispered, "Walk with me?" I nodded. We exited through the same doors he came in through, leaving behind that suffocating room full of fake smiles and frozen pride. The moment we stepped into the cool evening air, I exhaled like I hadn't breathed in hours. He looked at me and said softly, "Are you okay?" I turned to him. "I wasn't expecting you to show up like that." "I know," he said. "But after what I saw in that proposal, I could not come." We stopped near his car, sleek, matte black, with a silent engine humming like it was waiting for a war. He opened the passenger door for me like a gentleman, but I didn't get in yet. "You didn't tell me you knew my father." "I didn't," he replied. "Not until I put two and two together. I've heard Charles Reddington's name in many circles, but I didn't realize his Ava was you." I blinked. "I'm not his Ava." Michael tilted his head. "You're not. And thank God for that." The drive was quiet at first. Tense. I stared out the window as the suburbs blurred into the city's skyline.
My phone buzzed 5 times.
Lorraine. My father. A cousin I hadn't spoken to in years. I turned the phone off. "I'm sorry about what happened in there," Michael finally said. "No one should be treated like that. Especially not you." I swallowed hard, voice quiet. "It's not the first time." Michael's jaw clenched. "It'll be the last." I turned to him, really seeing him now. "Why are you doing this? Why me?" He didn't answer right away. Instead, he pulled over in front of an upscale midtown building. Not his office. His private building. He parked, turned off the engine, and looked me straight in the eyes. "Because when I read your business plan, I saw something no one else saw. Not just potential.
Pain. Fire.
A hunger that doesn't come from books. It comes from survival." I stayed silent, stunned. "I built Langston Capital from nothing," he said. "Raised in foster care. Used to sleep on library floors. I recognize hunger when I see it. And Ava, your hunger? It's the kind that changes entire industries." We sat in silence after that.
Heavy. Real.
Then he said, almost cautiously, "Come inside. Let's talk about your future." I followed him. Inside his penthouse, everything smelled like clean leather and understated luxury. Nothing flashy, just powerful, like him. And as we sat down and opened up laptops and sketches and mock-ups I'd sent weeks ago, ideas I didn't think anyone actually read, I watched something shift in me. I wasn't the girl slapped at her father's party anymore. I was the woman being seen for the first time. "Your app isn't just smart," Michael said, scrolling through. "It's scalable, community-focused. It solves a problem no one else bothered to fix." "Because people like me are the problem," I said, bitterness slipping in. "To people like them." He looked at me for a long second. "Then let's make sure they become the problem."
To you.
I smiled. And that was the night it all began. The revenge I never asked for, but was about to earn. 3 weeks later, they were calling me ma'am. The same investors who laughed politely behind my back, the same distant family members who barely made eye contact. Now all of them were leaning forward in their chairs, nodding too eagerly, watching my mouth for the next word. I was at the Langston Equity Summit in Manhattan. I wasn't just invited. I was on the stage. And I wasn't introduced as Charles Reddington's daughter. I was introduced as Ava Reddington, founder and CEO of Hearthlink, the community-driven housing tech startup that had just closed $4.7 million in seed funding under Langston Capital. The press was everywhere. Forbes, TechCrunch, local NYC media. Everyone wanted a quote.
Everyone wanted me.
But no one knew what mattered most. This was never about revenge. It was about being undeniable. Still, revenge came as a side effect. Because just 3 days after the summit, Lorraine showed up at my new office. wearing pearls, trying to look motherly. I spotted her the moment I stepped out of the elevator. She was sitting with my assistant, sipping tea like she hadn't screamed in my face and slapped me like a dog. "Lorraine," I said flatly. She stood up immediately.
Ava.
"I wasn't sure if you'd want to see me, but I don't." Her smile wavered. "I just thought since your father and I saw the article in Forbes, we could talk. Reconnect." I stared at her. "Reconnect?" She blinked. "We were worried about you all these years, honey. You never answered our messages, and your father." "My father?" I cut in. "The one who looked the other way while you humiliated me in front of 200 people?" She froze. Silence. I stepped closer. My voice low, steady. "You want something. What is it?" Her smile dropped completely. And she said, "Charles's company isn't doing well. A few investors pulled out. He had a meeting with Langston last week, but—" I stopped her there. "Langston doesn't take his calls." She went pale. "I make the decisions on that account now," I added. "Didn't he tell you?" She sank into the chair like her legs gave out. "He didn't. He thought maybe since you're still his daughter." "I'm not," I said, sharp now. "At least not when it counts." Her face crumpled, but not with guilt, just fear. I wanted to throw her out. But then, something darker whispered inside me. Let her stay. Let her watch what it feels like to be small.
To beg.
So I sat across from her and said, "If you want me to consider helping Charles, you'll both need to come to my office. Together. And apologize.
Publicly.
Not to me. To everyone you've lied to." She looked like I'd slapped her this time. "You're serious?" I smiled. "Oh, Lorraine. I've never been more serious." She left shaking. And sure enough, 2 days later, Charles walked into my building, red-faced, jaw clenched, holding Lorraine's hand like it was a funeral. He didn't say a word, just stood there, bitterly silent while she fumbled through a half-hearted apology video on camera. It wasn't enough, but it was a start. Later, Michael and I watched the clip from his office. He turned to me and asked, "How did that feel?" I looked at the screen. At the woman who once told me I was the leftover and the man who never protected me. I thought about it for a second, then said softly, "It didn't feel good." Michael raised an eyebrow. "It felt necessary." He nodded. "There's a difference."
We toasted to that.
Then he leaned forward and said, "You're just getting started." And he was right, because what was coming next would turn every silent laugh, every bruise, every dismissal into a firestorm no one could put out. By the time winter rolled in, HearthLink had already passed its series of funding milestone. We weren't just another startup anymore, we were a movement. What began as a personal solution, an app to connect underserved families with affordable, safe housing vetted through community partnerships, had become one of the most talked about tech-for-good platforms in the country. Schools were using it, veteran centers, domestic violence shelters, churches, whole cities. And behind it all, me, the girl who had once been told she wasn't family, now had congressmen, mayors, and celebrity investors calling her by name. But the higher I rose, the more the skeletons started falling out of other people's closets, especially my father's. It began with a simple background check. Standard due diligence before a major city partnership. Michael's legal team found something buried. Old contracts, years back. Misappropriated federal grant funds. Shell corporations masking real estate fraud. All linked to Reddington Global Properties. My father's company. I stared at the report, stunned. Lorraine had once said, "We don't give handouts to beggars." Now it turned out they had stolen from them. I sent the report to Michael with a single-line message. "What happens if this goes public?" His response came within seconds. "He'll be done. Legally and professionally." I stared at the screen. Cold. Detached. My heart didn't pound this time. It just steadied. Like it knew something final was about to begin. But I didn't release it. Not yet. Instead, I requested a meeting. Charles agreed, reluctantly. We met at a restaurant in Brooklyn. Private room. No press. He arrived wearing his old arrogance like a shield.
But I saw the cracks now.
So, he said, sipping bourbon, you called me here to talk numbers? I placed the report on the table between us. He didn't touch it. His face tightened. Where did you get that? It doesn't matter. He didn't speak for a long moment, just stared at the paper like it might bite him. When he finally looked up, there was something in his eyes I hadn't seen in years, fear. You destroy your own father's legacy? I leaned forward.
Calm. Clear.
You destroyed your own legacy. I'm just the one holding the receipt. I built everything from the ground up. On the backs of people who needed help, I snapped. You stole from veterans, Charles. From families. From single moms who trusted you. His voice dropped to a whisper. You don't understand the pressure I was under. The loans. The promises. I understand more than you think.
He blinked.
Because I lived it, I said. I lived with the absence. The silence. The way you look through me. I understand what it's like to fight for air in a room that refuses to acknowledge you're suffocating. He sat back. I pushed the report closer. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to resign. Quietly. No drama. No denials. You'll issue a statement taking full responsibility. You'll transfer whatever's left of your company's assets to a foundation run by someone who's not you. And if I don't, I didn't flinch. Then I'll hand this to the Attorney General and every news outlet in the state. Silence. He looked down. And for the first time in my entire life, I watched Charles Reddington fold. When I left the restaurant, I didn't feel triumphant. I felt emptied. Like I'd finally dragged the weight off my chest only to realize I didn't know what to do without it. Michael called me that night. Is it done? He asked. Yes, I said. You don't sound happy. I don't think this kind of justice makes you happy. He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, You're not supposed to be happy right now. You're supposed to be free. And maybe that was it. Not joy. Not gloating. Just freedom. But freedom comes with echoes. And mine were only just beginning. It had been a month since the resignation. Charles disappeared from the public eye. Lorraine vanished from social circles. And the media spun their own version of the fall, a scandal, a tragedy, a fall from grace. But I didn't care about the headlines anymore. I was in my new apartment in Tribeca, sitting on the floor beside a stack of sketches. Hearth Link was expanding. We were opening in 5 more cities. We had more demand than I could handle. It should have felt like victory. But it didn't. Because in winning, I'd lost something, too. I didn't cry. I didn't regret. But I felt. And I hadn't felt anything real in a while. Then, out of nowhere, a knock at my door. I opened it slowly, half expecting a reporter or a delivery. It was my father. Not in a suit. Not in a tailored coat. Just jeans, a windbreaker, and eyes that looked hollow. I know I'm the last person you want to see, he said. I didn't answer. I stepped aside. He walked in and stood there like he didn't belong. For once, he looked like a man who'd lost everything, not just a business, but the illusion of being right. I didn't come to beg, he said. I came to tell you something I never said. He paused. Then, I was wrong. About everything. About you. I didn't move. He added, quieter. You became more than I ever expected. Not in spite of me. Because I gave you nothing to lean on. And yet you still stood. The silence between us was heavier than the words. Then he said, I know I don't deserve forgiveness. But I wanted you to hear it from me. I stared at him, heart beating like it used to when I was a child, hoping he'd see me. Then I said, I don't hate you. But I can't carry you anymore. You built your world by tearing down mine. I'm just rebuilding what you left in ruins. He nodded. And then he left. No more arguments. No more excuses. Just silence. The kind that finally felt peaceful. That night, I stood by the window, watching the city flicker below. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel like a ghost in someone else's house. I felt like I belonged. Not because I got revenge, but because I survived and built something better.